Hello, welcome to Care to Talk, a conversation exploring care and end-of-life issues. I'm Corey, and today we're going to be talking about Hospice Southeast New Brunswick with our guest, Francis LeBlanc. The Care to Talk podcast is hosted by Hospice Southeast New Brunswick as a tool to have frank and honest conversations about end-of-life. At the end of the show, we'll provide a short update on upcoming activities that might be of interest. So let's go. Welcome, Francis LeBlanc.
On today's episode, I'm joined by the CEO of Hospice Southeast New Brunswick, Francis LeBlanc. Welcome, Francis.
Thanks, Corey.
Let's start off today's episode by getting to know a little bit about you. So can you talk a little bit about Francis LeBlanc?
That's a big question. So I joined Hospice in June 2022. Was a great opportunity, knew a bit about hospice. I live across the street, so certainly had followed the progression of construction and so forth, was looking for a new challenge, and hospice sort of found me. I do come from a healthcare background. Health administration has been my passion for probably close to 15 years, worked in government relations and policy, and this seemed like a natural transition to have more direct impact on community, certainly very community-minded, and my career's really sort of, in some way, built me to then join Hospice Southeast New Brunswick, and very thankful that it has.
What is Hospice Southeast New Brunswick in your own words?
So we describe hospice, a SENB, in many, many ways, including a beacon of hope, a compassion and action. And I think that really does reflect what we do here. It is a non-for-profit registered charity that was created in 2004. Our mandate is to help individuals navigate end of life with dignity and compassion, but it's much more than that. It really is about people, it's about relationships, and it's about community. And those values are really what inspires us day to day to do the care that we do, be it here at Balado House, our 10-bed facility, in community through our programming, and also through our entrepreneurial activities at the boutique hospice shop. So that's hospice in a nutshell.
When you look at the entire picture of healthcare in Southeast New Brunswick, what makes hospice unique?
So we recently celebrated 3 hospice heroes this week, in fact. So Jack Cameron, our founder, with Margaret Johnston, our grief and bereavement support group's creator, if you will, and Dennis Cochran, which was a leading force in our capital campaign and building of Balado House. And in his acceptance speech, if you will, Dennis talked about how different hospice is because it's not institutionalized. It really is a home away from home, and that level of personalization, that level of compassion, and that flexibility that it provides us is really, I think, what distinguishes us. Because we are a non-for-profit, completely independent from the system, even though we work obviously very closely with regional health authorities, extramural, and so forth, we do have that flexibility to provide an exceptional level of personalization, really putting the person and the family at the center of the approach. And our circle of care is not just the nurses and support workers, but it really starts from the door, the volunteers, the reception, housekeeper. Everyone is part of the circle of care, and everyone has eyes and ears on the floor so that we can really be providing the best experience for our residents and families. And I think that approach really distinguishes us maybe from other organizations.
You talked a little bit about the roots of Hospice Southeast New Brunswick going back 20 years. Can you talk a little bit about that history? Because we're very proud of our history.
Very proud. And we're celebrating 20 years this year in 2024. So very excited for that. It was, hospice has a long history around the world, as you know, started in more European settings. A lot of religious orders had been providing that level of person-to-person support for obviously centuries at this point. But hospice in most of Canada has really started by volunteer-based organizations or volunteer-based groups that got together and provided that support to families and people going through end of life. Inspired by that level of commitment, as well as his own experience, one of our founders, Jack Cameron, created the organization in 2004. His partner, wife at the time, was going through cancer treatment, and he thought there must be a better way to provide that compassionate, dignified care in a home-like setting, and also the supports. So he created Hospice Greater Moncton that then transitioned to Hospice Southeast New Brunswick in 2004. And several volunteers, hundreds if not thousands at this point, have contributed to what we are today, building up the boutique hospice shop, fundraising millions of dollars to eventually build the Maison Albert House, which really is a gem in this community and something that we're very, very proud of.
You mentioned boutique hospice shop. Can you talk a little bit more about boutique hospice shop? Because it's an amazing facility.
It is. I always thank the gods, if you will, for whoever created the boutique hospice shop. It's such a great part of our organization. So Hospice Southeast New Brunswick is a non-for-profit. We do have sort of three core pillars of activities. We have our community programming, our Maison Albert House, and that entrepreneurial component, which is the boutique hospice shop. It was started in 2010, again by volunteers. Originally on Moncton Road, then moved eventually to Collishaw to its permanent location. The boutique hospice shop is an upscale resale store. We take donations from the community or overstock from companies. We sell it for close to market value, and all the proceeds help support directly the care that's provided here at Maison Albert House or in our community. That model is an incredible one. The community has been incredibly generous. Donors also in return get an income tax receipt at the end of the year, consolidated for over $20. So it really is a win-win. For us at Hospice, is building up those social enterprises, those businesses that will help us ensure more sustainable funding long-term, and to ensure that we can really work on our mandate in providing the care that the community needs.
So let's switch the talk a little bit. We just had a big event this week, the Gala, which was exceptional. I mean, it just was one of the funnest times of the year for me. And we have many events every year. Can you talk a little bit about those? I know we have the golf tournament coming up. Holly Heart for Hospice is always a great time. Which event do you love the most and why?
I was going to joke, I love the events once they're done. Because they take so much time to prepare and to host. But really quickly, so Hospice must raise a lot of money every year to make sure that we can provide care free of charge to residents. So independently of your needs or your means, rather, you can get access to hospice care. So first and foremost, so to do that, we rely on partial funding from the province of New Brunswick. Very thankful for that contribution. The boutique hospice shop is also a great source of revenue. But with that, we also host 5 signature events every year. So we have the Hospice Heroes Gala, which we just hosted this week, which was really fun. We have our golf tournament, which will be the 31st of July, 2024 at Fox Creek in partnership with BMW Mini Moncton. Very thankful for that partnership as well. We have our Memorial Walk in September, 15th of September, I believe, as well as Holy Heart for Hospice with the Tire Shack. Last year was our first one. It was a great time. And then finally, our Angel Remembered, which is probably our longest standing campaign with 20 plus years, I think at this point. Started, well, I guess 20 years from our beginning. I think my favorite event, I really enjoyed Hospice Heroes. It's a great time, but it's a lot of work. For me, the golf tournament for me is such a great day. Last year was really sunny. We had 36 teams of people just coming together and celebrating 2 incredible community pillars, but just rejoicing on being together and creating some quality memories. So I really enjoyed the golf tournament last year, and I hope to enjoy it even more this year. We have new surprises in store, so I'm very excited for that.
I agree with you. I think the golf tournament, there's something special about it because the volunteers are integral in us being able to provide the golf tournament as well as it runs every year. And just the staff and volunteers mixing and working together, it's such a rewarding event. What are the future plans for Hospice Southeast New Brunswick? It's a big question.
It is a big question. We have very ambitious plans. I think the organization has shifted or has grown so much. Pre-pandemic, pre-Maison Albert House, really focused on community program and the boutique. Maison Albert House has definitely changed our reality here and the financial pressures and making sure that we are meeting the needs. We are a 10-bed facility. We could easily fill another 10 beds today. There is a large demand for our services, which is wonderful. And what we are also unable to really meet the entire demand. So there is certainly interest in expanding our facility here, looking at rural New Brunswick or Albert, Kent counties specifically around potential expansion or co-location in other communities, and also rethinking how we're supporting people at home. So I often reflect about what the needs of our community. And when we welcome residents and their families, obviously the residents have needs, but often the families and the caregivers can be really exhausted by the time they get here. And it's almost through a critical period of time, either they're going to hospital or they come here. So is there ways for us to rethink hospice care in a home-like setting? There's certainly models across the world, including in the US and Ontario, that are doing some really interesting work. And I'm just curious for us to start exploring those opportunities. How we can best support people at home until they either get admitted or if they choose to stay there, in addition to the existing programs that already exist through extramural, which provide exceptional care, home care, and so forth. So there are certainly some very ambitious plans. We also have our grief and bereavement support groups. When we look at our access, we do a fairly good job at Westmoreland County, maybe not so much in Albert and Kent. So we want to make sure that we are increasing our capacity, increasing the number of volunteers in more rural areas so that we can better reach people in those communities closer to home, providing the services that they need for those experiencing loss. So very interesting.
Ambitious plans. I know you're a very ambitious person, and we talk a lot about those dreams and goals. So I'm very excited to see them come true in the coming years. Can you share a more touching story or your favorite story from Maison Albert in the last couple of years? I know there's many.
A favorite. Honestly, there's, because, Corey's been with Maison Albert House since its beginning, almost 3 years ago. So certainly you've seen a lot. For me, there's a lot of really high points of, Mr. Party Pants and the Monarch butterflies and the Santa visits. Like, I love those during Christmas times. But for me, it's like those really small, special moments that I observe day to day. It's the nurse giving a caress on a hand, or singing a song, or playing a game with a resident. I think for me, it's all those small things that really make the difference in the care we provide. And those are always my favorite. And they're done in such a way that no one notices, but they happen all the time. And I think that's my favorite.
I always say that Maison Albert isn't a job, it's a calling. You're meant to be here, and our staff are outstanding. When I first mentioned this podcast to you, you were all in. You loved it. Why and what are the plans with this podcast? What are your dreams?
Yeah, so we have been talking about a podcast of some sort probably for 1.5 years, if not. First and foremost, I love podcasts. So that certainly is one of my main ways to get information. I think it's such a powerful educational tool too. Part of our mission, or part of our goal here at Hospice, is to open up the dialogue around end of life. There's so much misconceptions. There's so much unknowns around end of life, palliative care. When we started talking about it, Dr. Leger was there, Brenda, and so forth. Was like, how can we educate people about what palliative care is? What is hospice care? What we do, what people should know, what people should consider, and all these questions. We do our very best through community presentations and so forth to try to educate people. But is there a way to gain a bigger audience or a bigger reach? And I think a podcast can be one of those tools that we can take our existing expertise and share it across, well, literally the world in theory, but certainly the New Brunswick experience.
I love that. I think that's my goal too, just to continue to spread word of what hospice is and why we're here and the role that we play. I've got a fun question. If we were making a hospice mixtape, because there may be a hospice playlist that gets created, what song are you adding?
So it's funny because Corey and I have collaborated on some maybe questions, and I knew this was coming, and you would think I would have thought about it before. So I love Montel Jordan. I am a 90s. I'm not a 90s kid. So I'm actually born in the 80s, but I love 90s music. And This Is How We Do It is like my jam. When it comes on, I'm just like all dance. And obviously, the words are what they are. But I think the spirit of the song of just like, we're vibing, we're getting it done, just always gets me going. So certainly I would add that song.
That's an interesting song. We'll make sure that we toss that one in there.
I may have a version 2 for the next appearance.
Next time we get the karaoke, maybe we'll sing that one.
Absolutely.
So we've reached the end of our interview. Is there anything else that you want to add, Francis? Is there anything that we haven't touched on?
So, not necessarily. I think throughout the interview, we talked about a bit what hospice is, but just want to reiterate that hospice is from the community for the community. It is 100% community-minded, community-focused organization. And that should never change. I think that really is distinguishing and makes us the special place that we are. So just very thankful for everyone, the thousands of people who've been involved in the history of the organization through 20 years, and the hundreds of volunteers that still provide so much of their time and resources to the organization. We are just so thankful for them, and just very excited for the next chapter.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Francis. I certainly appreciate having you on. I'm looking forward to having you back on in the future as we grow this podcast and we grow this organization. So have a great day and talk soon.
Thank you.
Hospice SENB is a registered charity created in 2004 to promote life-limiting conditions. We provide hospice care, in-home support, and grief support, serving Albert, Kent, and Westmoreland counties. To learn more about Hospice SENB, please visit us at www.hospicesenb.ca. You can also search Hospice SENB on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. You can also visit the shop, located at 164 Collishaw Street in Moncton. Our next event is going to be the Memorial Golf Tournament on the 31st of July, sponsored by BMW Moncton. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.